Picture this: you're strapped into a small sleeping pod, drifting weightless as the station hums around you. Outside your window, Earth glows like a sapphire against the endless black, breathtaking and impossibly distant. This is home now. For 200 days, this fragile metal habitat is your entire world. No fresh air, no sunlight warming your skin, just the vast, silent expanse of space pressing in on all sides. Living on an orbital lab isn't just a technical marvel, it's an emotional marathon, a test of human resilience few will ever experience firsthand. Think about the last time you felt truly isolated. Maybe it was during a long trip or a quiet night when the world felt far away. Now multiply that by 100. Astronauts describe their time in space as a roller coaster of awe and loneliness, where moments of transcendent beauty collide with the gnawing ache of separation. The freedom of zero gravity, the thrill of seeing 16 sunrises in a single day, these are the highs. But then there are the lows, the cramped quarters, the relentless routine, the knowledge that everyone you love is locked behind the barrier of atmosphere, unreachable in an emergency. It's a life of extremes, where every emotion is amplified by the surreal reality of living in a place never meant for humans. Yet here's the thing: despite the challenges, something extraordinary happens up there. People adapt. They find joy in the smallest things: a shared meal with crewmates, the way light dances through the station, the quiet pride of fixing a broken system with nothing but ingenuity and duct tape. This isn't just a story about survival. It's about what happens when humans are pushed to the edge of their comfort zone and discover what they're truly capable of. Over the next few minutes, we'll pull back the curtain on the untold side of space travel, the tears, the laughter, the unexpected moments of connection that redefine what it means to be far from home. Strap in, you're about to see the stars through the eyes of those who have lived among them. The dream of living among the stars isn't just about science, it's about something deeper, something wired into our very humanity. Since the first time our ancestors looked up at the night sky and wondered what lay beyond, we've been drawn to space with a mix of awe and relentless curiosity. For astronauts, that pull is even stronger. It's not just the thrill of zero gravity or the chance to conduct groundbreaking research, it's about being part of something bigger than themselves. Imagine standing on the shoulders of every explorer who ever dared to push boundaries, from sailors navigating uncharted oceans to pilots breaking the sound barrier. Space is the last great frontier, and those who venture there carry that legacy with them. But this isn't a journey for the faint of heart. The selection process for orbital missions is grueling, designed to find individuals who are not only physically fit but mentally unshakable. Candidates spend years proving they can handle extreme stress, isolation, and the unexpected. They're tested on everything from teamwork in high-pressure scenarios to their ability to stay calm when systems fail. And here's what's fascinating: the best astronauts aren't just fearless, they're deeply human. They feel the weight of separation from loved ones. They miss the smell of rain, the touch of grass underfoot. Yet they go anyway, driven by a combination of personal ambition and a profound sense of duty. What keeps them pushing forward? For some, it's the pure joy of discovery, the chance to answer questions no one else has ever asked. For others, it's patriotism, the honor of representing their country in the most extreme environment imaginable. And then there are those who see it as a calling, a way to advance humanity's future. But beneath all these motivations lies a shared truth: living in space changes you. It strips away the distractions of Earth and forces you to confront who you really are. Out there, floating in the silence between stars, there's no room for pretense. Every emotion is magnified, every connection treasured. That's the real allure, not just the adventure, but the raw, unfiltered experience of being human in a place where nothing is familiar. The first moments in orbit feel like stepping into a dream. 1 second you're pinned to your seat by the raw power of launch, and the next weightlessness. That initial rush is intoxicating. Astronauts often describe it as the purest form of freedom they've ever known. Every mundane action becomes magical. A pen floats mid-air, a droplet of water hovers like a tiny crystal, and your body moves with the slightest push. Even veteran space travelers can't suppress childlike grins as they tumble through modules, relearning how to navigate a world without up or down. Then there's the view. Pressing your face against the observation window, Earth unfolds beneath you, a swirling masterpiece of blues and greens, wreathed in delicate layers of atmosphere. Cities glitter like scattered constellations at night, and storms pulse with an eerie, silent grandeur. It's overwhelming in the best way. Many astronauts admit they spend those first days glued to the windows, snapping photos until their cameras overheat, desperate to bottle the feeling. Camaraderie blooms fast in these early hours. Crewmates bond over shared wonder, laughing as they fumble with floating utensils or collaborate on their first experiments. There's a sense of giddy disbelief. We're really here. Teams that trained for years on the ground suddenly see each other in a new light, united by the surreal reality of their environment. Meal times turn into impromptu celebrations, with tubes of rehydrated food passed like trophies and stories traded in excited bursts. But beneath the euphoria, reality whispers. The human body isn't built for zero gravity, and it rebels almost immediately. Without the pull of Earth, fluids shift upward, causing puffy faces and throbbing headaches. Spatial confusion sets in. Even seasoned pilots reach for handrails that aren't where they expected. Sleep is fractured, with the brain struggling to reconcile the absence of a mattress beneath you. And then there's the subtle, creeping awareness. This isn't a vacation. The lab's walls are your entire universe now, and the checklist of tasks, system checks, repairs, experiments is relentless. The honeymoon phase is beautiful, but it's also fragile. Like the first sip of water after a long thirst, the initial high can't last. What comes next is the slow settling in, the moment when the awe starts to coexist with the weight of responsibility. The station isn't just a playground, it's a high-stakes workplace where every action echoes. And floating outside your window always is that breathtaking, lonely view of home, close enough to see, but too far to touch. That initial euphoria, the floating, the views, the novelty of zero gravity, it doesn't last forever. Around week 6, something shifts. The station that once felt like an adventure starts to feel small. The same walls, the same faces, the same routines. Earth keeps turning below, life keeps moving, but you're frozen in this metal bubble, watching it all from a distance. This is when isolation digs its claws in. Astronauts call it the slump, that moment when the mission stops being a thrill and becomes a marathon of the mind. You wake up to the same hum of machinery, the same recycled air, no wind, no rain, no unexpected encounters. Every conversation with loved ones is scheduled, filtered through laggy video calls where their laughter takes just a fraction too long to reach you. Birthdays, anniversaries, bad days, you're there, but not really. It's like living in a photograph of your own life. Some astronauts admit they stop watching news from home because it hurts too much seeing sidewalks they can't walk on, coffee shops they can't visit, seasons changing without them. But here's where it gets fascinating. Humans adapt. We have to. Crews develop rituals to fight the loneliness, movie nights with floating popcorn, pranks to keep morale high, even tiny rebellions like smuggling a favorite snack into the food supply. Psychologists on the ground design strict routines to anchor them. Exercise blocks, mandatory social time, even virtual reality escapes to simulate hiking trails or beach walks. The mind craves novelty, so they create it. One astronaut journaled every day, filling pages with memories of Earth's textures, the grit of sand, the weight of a blanket. Another taught themselves to play the ukulele, letting music fill the quiet. The strangest adaptation, how time distorts. Without sunrises or weekends, the brain struggles to mark the passing days. Some report feeling suspended, like they are floating outside of time itself. Others describe moments of eerie clarity, staring at the stars and feeling both insignificant and profoundly connected to everything. It's a paradox. The further you are from humanity, the more you feel its weight. And then there are the surprises. Crewmates who barely knew each other on Earth become confidants, sharing stories they'd never tell anyone else. Arguments flare over nothing, a misplaced tool, a tone of voice, because stress has nowhere to go in a sealed environment. But so do unexpected acts of kindness, a shared chocolate bar saved for a bad day, a handwritten note tucked into a locker. This is the unspoken truth of long-duration missions. It's not just about surviving in space, it's about surviving yourself. The silence, the distance, the unrelenting sameness, they strip you down to your core. What's left isn't just an astronaut. It's a person floating in the dark, learning how to be alone without being lonely. Imagine waking up to the same beeping alarm, floating out of the same sleeping pod, and staring at the same checklist you've seen for 72 days straight. Life in orbit runs on precision, every minute scheduled, every task timed down to the second. At first, the structure is comforting. There's no room for error when you're maintaining a fragile habitat hurtling through space at 17,500 miles per hour. But over time, that predictability starts to feel like a cage. The human mind craves variety, the smell of coffee brewing differently each morning, the spontaneous chat with a neighbor, the surprise of rain tapping against your window. In space, none of that exists. Take meals, for example. On Earth, even if you eat the same breakfast every day, there's still variation. The toast is crispier one morning, the fruit juicier the next. Up there, food comes dehydrated, vacuum-sealed, and meticulously rationed. Every bite is calculated for nutrition, not joy. Astronauts joke about the menu fatigue that sets in after weeks of rehydrated shrimp cocktail and thermostabilized meatloaf. Some resort to trading meal packs like kids swapping lunchbox items just to trick their brains into thinking they've had something new. Then there's work. Experiments follow rigid protocols, maintenance tasks repeat like clockwork, and even exercise, a non-negotiable daily ritual to combat muscle loss, becomes a slog on the same treadmill, staring at the same patch of wall. Without gravity, your body doesn't even get the satisfaction of a good sweat. Droplets just cling to your skin until you towel them away. The absence of physical exertion's natural feedback, the burn in your muscles, the wind on your face makes workouts feel oddly hollow. But here's where it gets interesting. Astronauts don't just endure this monotony, they hack it. They invent games to make chores feel fresh, like seeing who can fold the most floating laundry in 60 seconds or turning system checks into scavenger hunts. One crew celebrated Taco Tuesdays by creatively combining food packets into makeshift fiesta meals. Another planted tiny seeds in the station's plant lab just to watch something grow, a living rebellion against the static metal world around them. The real lifeline, though, is novelty they create themselves. a surprise birthday decoration cobbled together from spare foil, a handwritten trivia quiz slipped into a colleague's toolkit. These tiny acts of spontaneity become lifelines, proof that even in the most controlled environment, humanity finds a way to spark joy. Because that's the paradox of routine in space. It's the scaffolding that keeps them alive, but it's the unscripted moments, the laughter, the inside jokes, the shared eye rolls over yet another protein shake, that remind them why they wanted to be here in the first place. And then there's the view. No matter how repetitive the days get, that window never loses its power. In the middle of a tedious task, an astronaut might glance outside and catch the auroras dancing over the poles like celestial fireworks, or the Nile River cutting through the Sahara like a vein of liquid emerald. Earth doesn't just rotate below them, it transforms moment by moment, a live mural no artist could replicate. That's the secret weapon against monotony, the knowledge that while their days might feel the same, the planet beneath them never does. You might think homesickness is just missing your family or favorite foods, but for astronauts there's something deeper, a visceral ache for Earth itself. They call it Earth sickness, and it's unlike anything you've felt on the ground. Imagine craving not just people, but the very texture of the planet. The way wind rustles through trees, the weight of a book in your hands, the scent of soil after a summer storm. These aren't just comforts, they're biological touchstones hardwired into us over millennia. In space, every sensory anchor is gone. No breeze, no humidity. No horizon to ground you, just sterile metal and the endless hum of machines. The psychological toll is profound. Astronauts report dreaming in smells, freshly cut grass, ocean salt, even gasoline, waking up disoriented when they realize it was just their mind playing tricks. Some keep jars of dirt or leaves in their personal kits, sneaking whiffs when the isolation becomes unbearable. Others obsessively watch nature documentaries just to hear the sound of waves or birdsong. One astronaut described staring at high-resolution photos of forests, tracing the patterns of bark with their fingers, as if touch could somehow transcend the screen. But the most surprising thing, it's the small absences that cut deepest, not being able to feel the heft of a coffee cup in your palm, the lack of temperature changes, no shivering mornings or sweaty afternoons. Even the silence is unnatural. On Earth, there's always background noise, insects, distant traffic, the creak of a house settling. In orbit, the only sounds are mechanical, a constant reminder of how far you are from anything alive. Coping becomes an art form. Crews grow plants not just for science but for therapy, marveling at the way roots push stubbornly through soil, a rebellion against the sterility around them. They record ambient sounds from Earth rainstorms, cafe chatter, and play them during sleep cycles to trick their brains into feeling connected. Some practice virtual grounding, using VR headsets to simulate walks on beaches or hikes through mountains, clinging to the illusion of Earth's rhythms. Yet even these strategies can backfire. One astronaut recalled bursting into tears when their VR hike glitched, abruptly reminding them they were trapped in a tin can hundreds of miles up. Another avoided looking at the planet for days because its beauty made the distance hurt more. This is the cruel duality of Earth sickness. The very thing that comforts you, the sight of home, also underscores how impossibly far away it is. What saves them in the end isn't technology or training, but something far simpler: each other. Crews bond over shared cravings, swapping stories of their favorite earthly sensations like currency. They celebrate Earth nights, cooking makeshift versions of childhood dishes or reenacting silly traditions, anything to rebuild a fragment of the world they've left behind. And when the ache becomes too much, they float to the observation module together, pressing their palms against the glass as if they could almost touch the clouds swirling below. This is the unspoken truth of long-term spaceflight. You don't just miss people, you miss being human, the messy, sensory, gloriously imperfect experience of living on a planet that was never meant to be seen from the outside. And yet, that very longing becomes a kind of fuel, because every second you spend aching for Earth is proof you haven't let go of what makes you you, even in the void. There's a cruel irony to communication in space. The closer you get to the stars, the harder it is to hear the voices that matter most. Even with satellites and cutting-edge tech, every conversation with Earth comes with a built-in lag, a heartbeat of silence between sentences that stretches the distance between "I miss you" and "I miss you too." On the station, a simple question like "How was your day?" can take 20 seconds to reach the ground and another 20 for the answer to float back. That 40-second gap might not sound like much, but when you're desperate for connection, it feels like shouting into a canyon and waiting for the echo. The delays turn conversations into clumsy dances. You learn to pause after every sentence, counting silently, terrified of talking over the other person. Jokes lose their punchlines. Emotional moments get derailed by accidental interruptions. One astronaut described trying to comfort their child after a bad day at school. By the time their words of encouragement arrived, the moment had passed, the kid already onto the next thing. It's like trying to hug someone through a locked door. Ground teams do their best to help. They schedule regular family calls, set up surprise messages from home, even arrange virtual dinner dates where astronauts float with a tablet showing their family's meal. But nothing replaces real-time connection. Some crews resort to old-school workarounds, leaving voice memos like cosmic love letters, or writing long emails they know won't be read for hours. Others get creative. One astronaut recorded bedtime stories for their kids weeks in advance, labeling each file with dates so the recordings would arrive right on time. The hardest part isn't the lag itself, it's what it represents. That delay is a physical reminder of the unbridgeable distance. When you see Earth through the window, it looks close enough to touch. But the silence between sentences screams the truth. You're isolated in ways no technology can fix. Yet here's the beautiful twist: astronauts find ways to make the silence meaningful. They savor those delayed replies like treasured gifts, replaying messages just to hear laughter again. They turn the lag into a ritual, using the pause to imagine what their loved ones might say next. And sometimes, when the connection cuts out entirely, they press their palms against the station's walls and send their thoughts downward, hoping somehow the people below will feel it. Because in the end, communication isn't just about words. It's about the stubborn human refusal to let the void win. Whether it's a pixelated smile on a screen or a handwritten letter launched on a resupply rocket, every attempt to bridge that gap is a rebellion, proof that even in the silence of space, love finds a way to echo. Living alongside the same handful of people for 200 days isn't just teamwork, it's an emotional pressure cooker. Imagine sharing a space no bigger than a school bus with colleagues who were strangers just months ago. Every habit, every quirk, every unspoken tension gets magnified in zero gravity. There's no walking away to cool off, no privacy beyond a thin sleeping pod curtain. Crews quickly learn that harmony isn't a luxury, it's survival. One misplaced word during a system repair or a snapped response over rationed supplies can ripple through the station, poisoning the air faster than a CO2 leak. Yet for all the potential friction, something extraordinary happens when humans are stripped of every earthly distraction. Bonds form at hyper-speed. Inside jokes evolve into a private language. A simple game of floating chess becomes a sacred ritual. astronauts describe moments of profound closeness, huddling around a tablet to watch a movie, passing a single bag of real coffee like contraband, or silently working side by side as Earth spins beneath them. These aren't just co-workers, they're the only people in the universe who truly understand what this experience feels like. Conflict is inevitable, of course. Stress simmers in unexpected ways. Maybe it's the way someone chews too loudly during meals or insists on playing the same music loop for weeks. Petty gripes balloon when there's no outlet. Ground control actually trains crews in space diplomacy, teaching them to voice frustrations before they fester. The golden rule: never let sunlight separate a disagreement, meaning hash it out before the station's next orbit plunges you into darkness. Some teams even institute gripe sessions, designated times to air annoyances with a strict no-judgment policy. The real test comes during emergencies. When alarms blare and systems fail, hierarchies dissolve. The quietest crew member might take charge with surprising calm, while the usual leader freezes. These moments reveal the crew's unspoken dynamics: who trusts whom, who defers, who steps up. Afterward, there's often a shift. Roles recalibrate, respect deepens. One astronaut recalled a near-catastrophic coolant leak that brought their team back from the brink of fracturing. Arguing over chore rotations felt ridiculous after we'd literally saved each other's lives, they said. What keeps these relationships from unraveling? Rituals, tiny acts of kindness, the shared understanding that no one, no matter how trained, is immune to loneliness. Crews develop their own traditions: birthday surprises crafted from spare parts, handwritten notes tucked into toolkits, even makeshift holidays like Halfway Day, celebrated with hoarded treats and terrible zero-gravity dancing. These moments become lifelines, reminders that they're not just a team, but a family of choice. The most successful missions aren't about avoiding conflict, they're about navigating it with grace. Astronauts return to Earth with relationships forged in fire, some strained, some unbreakable, but all of them carry the same lesson. In space, as in life, connection isn't just about proximity. It's about choosing, again and again, to float toward each other instead of drifting apart. The irony of living in space is that while you're surrounded by infinite emptiness, your world shrinks to the size of a few interconnected modules. Every movement requires calculation. A careless push-off could send you colliding into equipment or a crewmate. There are no hallways to pace, no parks to wander, no doors to slam when frustration boils over. Just a labyrinth of handrails and Velcro strips where personal space is measured in centimeters. For some astronauts, this reality hits hard. The first time you realize you can't step outside for fresh air or escape to a quiet corner, claustrophobia whispers in your ear. It starts subtly. The walls feel closer than they did yesterday. The hum of the life support system, once background noise, becomes a relentless reminder of your dependence on machines. One astronaut described waking from a nightmare where the station's walls were pressing inward, only to open their eyes to the same curved metal ceiling, no less confining than the dream. Others report phantom sensations of being trapped, even in sleep, as if their bodies refuse to forget gravity's embrace. But here's what's fascinating: humans adapt in extraordinary ways. NASA psychologists have spent decades studying how astronauts rewire their perception of confinement. Some learn to borrow space mentally, visualizing expansive landscapes during meditation, or using virtual reality headsets to simulate open fields. Others embrace the intimacy, finding comfort in the station's predictable layout, knowing every hatch and locker by touch becomes a kind of security. Design plays a crucial role in this mental gymnastics. Modern stations avoid right angles using curved walls to create an illusion of depth. Color psychology transforms sterile corridors, cool blues in workspaces to lower stress, warm yellows near sleep pods to simulate sunlight. Even the placement of windows is deliberate, offering constant visual escapes to the ultimate, open space outside. One engineer described orbital habitats as therapy machines, where every bolt and panel serves both physical and psychological needs. Yet no design can fully erase the weight of confinement. That's where rituals come in. Crews invent games that turn tight quarters into an advantage, like zero-gravity hide and seek or room tours, where they narrate imaginary mansions mapped onto their cramped modules. One astronaut celebrated Wall Wednesdays, dedicating time to simply float in place and appreciate how Earth's reflection transformed their metal surroundings into something infinite. The most effective coping mechanism, though, is perspective. Astronauts who thrive aren't those who ignore the walls, they're the ones who redefine them. That module isn't a cage, it's a diving bell keeping you safe in an ocean of stars. The airlock isn't a barrier, it's a porch overlooking the universe. This mental shift turns confinement from a prison into a privilege, the ultimate front row seat to wonders most will only ever dream of, and when the walls do feel too close. They look out the window, because nothing puts a few square meters of living space in perspective like seeing your entire planet suspended in the void. A reminder that home is both unimaginably vast and small enough to hold in your heart. Time doesn't just pass differently in space, it rewires your brain. On Earth, your body syncs with the planet's rhythms. Sunlight tells you when to wake, dusk signals winding down, and seasons mark the year's progression. But in orbit, the station circles Earth every 90 minutes, plunging you through 16 sunrises and sunsets in a single day. This celestial carousel destroys every natural cue your biology relies on. At first, it's exhilarating, like living outside time itself, but soon the disorientation sets in. Days blur, nights vanish, your internal clock, the circadian rhythm that's guided human existence for millennia, starts unraveling. Sleep becomes the first casualty. Without the gentle pressure of a mattress or the pull of gravity, your body floats in the sleeping bag like a ghost, unsure if it's truly resting. Some astronauts report vivid, hyper-real dreams, as if their brains are overcompensating for the lack of sensory input. Others battle insomnia, staring at the same patch of ceiling while the station's lights stay stubbornly bright. Ground control enforces strict sleep schedules, typically 8.5 hours, but in the void, time stretches and contracts like taffy. You might finish a shift convinced only 2 hours have passed, only to check the clock and realize you've worked through half a day. To fight this temporal freefall, stations mimic Earth cycles with artificial lighting. The LEDs gradually shift from cool blue in the morning to warm amber at night, tricking your brain into recognizing day and night. Crews adhere to Greenwich Mean Time as an anchor, scheduling meals, work, and downtime as if they were still planetside. But these are fragile illusions. One astronaut described the eerie sensation of glancing at their watch during a midnight snack, only to see sunlight blazing through the window, a visual dissonance no amount of training prepares you for. The psychological toll is subtler but deeper. Humans mark time through milestones, weekend barbecues, holiday gatherings, the first snow. In space, these markers vanish. Months become indistinguishable. Christmas feels like any other workday except for the freeze-dried turkey. Some astronauts create their own rituals. A weekly movie night becomes sacred. A photo of their child's birthday taped to the wall becomes a temporal landmark. Others obsessively track mission elapsed time, counting down not out of eagerness to leave, but to feel the reassuring forward march of days. Yet within this temporal dislocation lies an unexpected gift. Freed from Earth's rhythms, many experience moments of pure presence rare on the ground. Floating in the observation module during a night pass, watching city lights flicker below like embers, time ceases to matter. There's only the now, the silent awe of existing between stars and Earth, untethered from clocks and calendars. Astronauts return with a paradoxical relationship to time, both a newfound appreciation for its structure and the haunting knowledge that beyond our atmosphere, it was always an illusion. The greatest countermeasure isn't technical, it's human. Crews learn to measure time in shared laughter during meals, in the growing roots of their onboard garden, in the gradual mastery of a new experiment. They discover that time isn't just something that passes. It's something you inhabit, whether you're on a planet spinning through space or a lab orbiting it. And sometimes the most profound moments happen when you forget to count the minutes at all. The silence up there isn't like any quiet you've experienced on Earth. No rustling leaves, no distant traffic, not even the subtle creak of a building settling. Just the mechanical purr of life support systems and the occasional clang of a tool against metal. At first, it's peaceful, a respite from the noise pollution of modern life. But after weeks without the subconscious soundtrack of a living planet, something unsettling happens. Your brain, wired over millennia to interpret sound as safety, starts straining for input. Ears play tricks. You'll swear you heard footsteps in an empty module or a whisper when no one's there. Astronauts call these phantom sounds, auditory hallucinations born from sensory deprivation. The absence of natural noise does strange things to your sense of connection. On Earth, even alone in a room, you're surrounded by proof of life: birds outside the window, neighbors laughing downstairs. In space, the silence is absolute. Video calls with family become lifelines not just for conversation, but for the mundane background hum of existence. A dog barking, a kettle whistling, the tactile thump of a door closing. One astronaut described recording their child's piano practice before launch, playing it back during workouts just to feel tethered to the rhythms of home. Yet this acoustic void isn't all psychological strain. Many crews discover an unexpected upside. The silence becomes a canvas for focus. Without distractions, concentration sharpens. Tasks like repairing delicate equipment or analyzing data take on a meditative quality. Some compare it to the clarity found in sensory deprivation tanks, where the absence of input lets the mind expand. Scientists even report breakthroughs in orbital labs they couldn't achieve on Earth, attributing it partly to the brain's ability to dive deeper in uninterrupted stillness. The station itself becomes an instrument. Crews learn to read its sounds like a language. The change in a pump's pitch signaling a filter needs checking, or the new rattle in a fan hinting at debris. These aren't just noises, they're vital signs, and when the hum of machinery suddenly stops, that's when fear creeps in. True silence in space isn't peaceful, it's ominous. A system failure could mean losing oxygen or heat, so astronauts grow to welcome the very sounds that once felt intrusive, because in the void, noise means everything's working. To cope, crews manufacture their own soundscapes. Music playlists are curated like survival kits, upbeat tracks for morale during long repairs, ambient noise for sleep. Some request recordings of Earth's biophony, rainforest downpours, ocean waves, even the cacophony of a busy subway station. One cosmonaut famously played recordings of his hometown's morning birdsong every sunrise, creating an artificial dawn chorus to trick his circadian rhythm. Others collaborate on impromptu jam sessions, floating guitars or makeshift percussion instruments between modules. The most profound adaptation, though, is learning to listen differently. Without Earth's noise, you start hearing the station's heartbeat, the rhythmic cycling of air scrubbers, the metallic ping of expanding hull plates under temperature shifts. And outside, in the rare moments when all systems pause, there's the ultimate silence, the soundless roar of the cosmos itself. No air means no sound waves, so even a supernova exploding nearby would be utterly mute. That realization hits hard. You're floating in a universe of unimaginable violence and beauty, and it doesn't make a sound. This is the paradox of silence in space. It isolates you, yet sharpens your awareness. It amplifies loneliness, yet carves space for revelation. And when you finally return to Earth, the first thing many astronauts notice isn't the gravity or the smells. It's the overwhelming noise of wind, insects, and footsteps. After months in the quiet, the planet doesn't just feel alive. It sounds alive, and that, more than anything, reminds you you're home. There's a moment almost universal among astronauts when the sheer scale of what they're seeing rewires their understanding of existence. It's called the overview effect, and no amount of training can prepare you for it. Picture this: you're floating by the observation window, and suddenly, the entirety of Earth fills your vision. Not as a map or a globe, but as a living, breathing entity. No borders, no divisions, just swirling oceans, weather systems crawling like living things, and the paper-thin glow of atmosphere clinging to the surface. This isn't just a view, it's an awakening. Psychologists describe it as a radical shift in perception, where abstract concepts like global community or fragility of life become visceral truths. Astronauts report an overwhelming sense of interconnectedness, realizing that every war, every natural disaster, every human story they've ever known is happening down there, on that single, luminous marble. One NASA veteran described it as seeing the world through God's eyes, while another admitted they sobbed uncontrollably, not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of understanding how small and precious it all is. The effect lingers long after they return. Many become environmental advocates, haunted by the visible scars of deforestation and pollution they once saw from above. Others describe losing patience with earthly conflicts. How can borders matter when you've witnessed the planet without them? Some even struggle with reverse culture shock, bewildered by humanity's obsession with trivial divisions when viewed against the cosmic backdrop. But here's what's fascinating. The overview effect isn't just philosophical, it's physiological. Brain scans of astronauts show heightened activity in regions linked to empathy and spatial awareness post-mission, as if the experience literally rewires neural pathways. Crews return with what scientists call the astronaut's gaze, a distant, slightly altered look, like part of them is still orbiting. Perhaps the most profound takeaway is how it reshapes their definition of home. Earth stops being just a place you live. It becomes something you're part of, a fragile ecosystem you're suddenly desperate to protect. That's the paradox of the overview effect. The higher you go, the deeper your connection grows. And once you've seen the world that way, you can't unsee it. The planet isn't beneath you anymore, it's within you. Fear isn't something astronauts leave on the launch pad, it's their constant companion, floating beside them in the silence between stars. Every system alarm, every unexplained creak of the station's hull, every flicker of a warning light is a reminder. Survival here is fragile. One ruptured oxygen tank, one misaligned solar panel, one tiny crack in the hull could unravel everything. Yet these men and women don't just endure that reality, they learn to work alongside it, turning fear from a paralyzing force into a kind of sharpened focus. Training for disaster is brutal by design. Before ever leaving Earth, crews rehearse every conceivable catastrophe in hyper-realistic simulations. They're submerged in water tanks to practice spacewalks gone wrong, sealed in pitch-black modules to troubleshoot failures blindfolded, and subjected to sudden, scripted emergencies mid-task, like a fire alarm blaring during a delicate experiment. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to make reaction automatic. Muscle memory takes over where logic might freeze. One astronaut described it as learning to dance with chaos, where panic is a luxury their training won't allow. But simulations can't replicate the visceral truth of real danger. When a carbon dioxide scrubber fails at 3 a.m., or a coolant leak sends temperatures plummeting, there's no instructor waiting to debrief. Just the cold sweat on your neck and the knowledge that every second counts. What saves crews isn't just technical skill, it's the unspoken rhythm they develop, a near telepathic ability to distribute tasks without words. The quietest crew member might handle calculations while another stabilizes systems, their movements synchronized like a crewed spacecraft docking in perfect silence. Radiation is the invisible ghost they can't outrun. Earth's magnetic field no longer shields them from solar flares or cosmic rays, which means every cell in their body is vulnerable. Stations have shielded storm shelters for emergencies, but during long exposures, the risk lingers like a shadow. Astronauts joke darkly about space karma, the unproven theory that those who worry least get hit hardest. But behind the humor is a sobering truth: some dangers are beyond control. The mental shift comes when they accept that calculus, trading guaranteed earthly safety for the chance to touch the stars. The real test of resilience isn't during crises, but in the quiet moments after. When adrenaline fades and the weight of what almost happened settles in, that's when crews rely on rituals, debriefing over shared meals, writing private journal entries, or simply floating together in the observation module to remember why they're here. Fear doesn't vanish, it transforms. It becomes respect for the machinery keeping them alive, gratitude for their team's competence, and a fierce determination to make their time here matter. Because in space, every near disaster carries the same whispered lesson: fragility isn't weakness, it's what makes survival extraordinary. Creativity in space isn't just a pastime, it's a lifeline. When your world shrinks to a few metal modules, imagination becomes your escape pod. Astronauts have painted watercolors that swirl in zero gravity, composed music on floating keyboards, and filled journals with poetry scrawled mid-air. These aren't hobbies, they're acts of defiance against the void, proof that even in the most sterile environment, the human spirit refuses to be contained. Take Hadfield's guitar, for example. When the Canadian astronaut strummed Bowie's Space Oddity while floating aboard the ISS, it wasn't just a viral moment, it was a revelation. That guitar became a bridge between the isolation of orbit and the collective heartbeat of humanity below. Music, astronauts say, has a peculiar power in space. Without gravity, vibrations travel differently through the body. A single chord can resonate in your ribs like a second pulse. Crews often wake to someone playing a quiet melody, the notes curling through the modules like smoke, stitching together the silence. Then there's the written word. In the absence of natural landscapes, language becomes the canvas. Astronauts describe journaling with an urgency they never felt on Earth, as if floating untethered loosens something in the mind. Words flow faster, thoughts feel clearer. Some pen letters to their future selves, others chronicle the surreal details: how tears pool around your eyes instead of falling, or how sunlight through the cupola paints the walls in liquid gold. These journals often morph into something deeper than logs, meditations on fragility, on distance, on what it means to carry your humanity into the stars. Visual art takes on new dimensions when brushes don't obey gravity. Russian cosmonaut Alexei Leonov, the first person to conduct a spacewalk, also became the first artist in orbit, sketching Earth's curvature with colored pencils. Decades later, astronauts experiment with watercolors, watching pigments twist into abstract galaxies mid-air. The station's observation deck doubles as a studio, with our planet as the ultimate muse. One astronaut described painting auroras as they danced over the poles, chasing colors that no camera could fully capture, but perhaps the most unexpected creative outlet. Improvisation. When supplies run low, crews invent. A spare thermal blanket becomes a projector screen for movie nights. Food packets get repurposed into makeshift holiday decorations. Even science experiments spark artistry, like the time astronauts grew delicate zinnias, then found themselves hosting an impromptu bloom ceremony when the first flower opened, as if celebrating a tiny rebellion against the sterile metal world. These acts of creation do more than pass time. They reassert identity in a place designed for uniformity. Every strummed chord, every painted stroke, every written line whispers the same truth: I am here. I am human, and when the mission ends, these creations become more than mementos. They're fragments of a rare and radiant state, proof that even in the vast indifference of space, beauty persists. Imagine eating the same dozen meals on repeat for months, where every bite tastes faintly of plastic and your favorite flavors have dulled into nothingness. That's the reality of space cuisine, a carefully calculated science where nutrition trumps joy, and every calorie is engineered for survival. But here's what mission planners understand: food in orbit isn't just fuel. It's one of the last tangible threads connecting astronauts to Earth, a sensory lifeline in a world of sterile routines. The psychology of eating in space reveals a paradox. On one hand, meals are meticulously planned for efficiency: dehydrated, vacuum sealed, and stripped of crumbs that could clog air filters. Floating spaghetti sounds fun until you're wrestling with a pouch of lukewarm noodles that refuse to stay on your fork. Yet these mundane moments become emotional anchors. A simple act like sharing rehydrated shrimp cocktail on a Friday night transforms into a sacred ritual, a tiny rebellion against the monotony. Crews cling to these traditions, whether it's celebrating birthdays with hidden candy bars or trading ration packets like precious currency. Flavor fatigue is the silent thief of morale. In zero gravity, bodily fluids shift upward, congesting sinuses and dulling taste buds. Even spicy food loses its punch, leaving astronauts craving intensity. Hot sauce becomes gold dust, and wasabi packets are hoarded like contraband. One astronaut compared it to eating with a perpetual head cold. Everything tastes like cardboard. To combat this, space agencies now pack bold flavors: extra garlic, tangy citrus, anything to shock the senses awake. But the real game changer, the rare arrival of fresh fruit. The first crisp bite of an apple after months of mush is described as transcendent, a burst of Earth's vitality that can reduce grown astronauts to tears. The absence of fresh food cuts deeper than taste. On Earth, we take for granted the crunch of a carrot, the juice of a strawberry, textures that simply don't exist in orbit. Without these sensations, meals become functional rather than fulfilling. Some astronauts admit they stop looking forward to eating altogether, viewing food as just another task on the checklist. That's why psychological menus matter. Modern missions include comfort foods tailored to each crew member, a taste of home in vacuum-sealed pouches. A single bite of mom's lasagna recipe or a childhood candy bar can momentarily collapse the distance between the station and Earth, a fleeting reminder of who they were before the stars called. Perhaps the most profound aspect of space cuisine is its role as a cultural bridge. International crews bond over shared meals, introducing each other to hometown dishes reimagined for zero gravity. Russian cosmonauts might trade tins of borscht for American astronauts' mac and cheese, while Japanese crew members prepare space-safe sushi with nori and rehydrated rice. These exchanges do more than diversify menus. They stitch together a microcosm of Earth's diversity inside the station's walls. Food becomes diplomacy, a language of generosity in a place where resources are finite. The emotional weight of a meal peaks during holidays. Thanksgiving in orbit means thermostabilized turkey and powdered mashed potatoes, but crews decorate their tables with printed photos of autumn leaves and family gatherings. They video call loved ones during dinner, holding up food pouches like toast glasses across the void. It's bittersweet, the closest they'll get to home, yet a stark reminder of everything they're missing. These moments reveal the true function of food in space, not just to nourish the body, but to mend the fractures in the soul. Because when you're floating in the darkness, a familiar flavor can be the rope that ties you back to Earth. In the confined, weightless world of an orbital lab, exercise isn't just about maintaining muscle mass, it's a lifeline for the mind. Without the pull of gravity, the body deteriorates at an alarming rate. Bones lose density, muscles atrophy, and circulation slows. But the physical toll is only half the battle. The psychological strain of isolation and monotony can be just as debilitating, creeping in like a silent fog. That's where the treadmill bolted to the floor and the bicycle with no wheels become more than equipment, they're therapy machines, fighting depression one pedal stroke at a time. Working out in microgravity is nothing like hitting the gym on Earth. Forget the satisfying burn of a dumbbell or the momentum of a jog. Here, every movement requires countermeasures. Astronauts strap themselves into harnesses to keep from floating away mid-squat, and resistance machines use vacuum cylinders instead of weights. Even the simplest exercises demand creativity. Push-ups become a game of balancing against handrails, and yoga poses turn into floating contortions. The absurdity isn't lost on crews. Laughter often mingles with the hum of the exercise bike as they fumble through zero-gravity burpees. Yet these awkward workouts are a psychological necessity. Physical activity floods the brain with endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin neurochemicals that combat the depression lurking in the void. On Earth, a bad day might be soothed by a walk outside or a bike ride through the park. In space, the treadmill becomes that escape. One astronaut described running as the only time I feel grounded. The rhythmic thud of shoes against the belt syncing with their heartbeat, a fleeting echo of terrestrial life. The station's stationary bike, nicknamed the Psychological Life Raft, offers a different release. Pedaling furiously while watching Earth scroll past the window creates a paradox, exertion paired with serenity, as if sweating through stress while floating above it. The routine itself is a mental anchor. In an environment where days blur together, the mandated 2-hour daily exercise block becomes a sacred ritual. It structures the endless sameness, providing measurable progress when everything else feels static. Crews obsess over their data, heart rates, calorie burns, resistance levels, not just for health, but for the satisfaction of seeing tangible proof of their effort. One astronaut compared it to building a ladder out of numbers, each workout a rung climbing back toward their earthly selves. But perhaps the most profound benefit is the camaraderie. Group exercise sessions turn into impromptu therapy circles, where the shared struggle against floating dumbbells and tangled resistance bands fosters connection. There's no judgment when someone's form falters, just understanding, and sometimes laughter as they untangle themselves from elastic cords. These moments of collective effort remind them they're not alone, even when home feels light years away. The brutal truth is this: in space, the body and mind are at war with the environment. Exercise is the armor. It's the sweat that washes away the melancholy, the pulse that drowns out the silence, and the stubborn refusal to let the void win. Because when you're fighting to stay whole in a world that wants to unravel you, every rep is a rebellion. The screen flickers to life and suddenly you're there. Not in the sterile metal corridors of the station, but at your kitchen table back home, watching your daughter blow out birthday candles. The image is pixelated, the audio slightly delayed, but for those 30 precious minutes, Earth doesn't feel quite so far away. This is the paradox of technology in space. The very machines that tether astronauts to the void also become their bridges back to humanity. From laggy video calls to immersive virtual reality, digital tools don't just combat isolation, they redefine what it means to stay connected when home is a blue marble in the black. Video chats are the most obvious lifeline, but they're far from simple. Scheduling a call requires military precision, aligning orbital passes with ground-based availability and praying the satellites cooperate. When the connection holds, the effect is magical. Families crowd around tablets, dogs bark at screens, and for a fleeting moment, astronauts exist in two places at once. But when the signal drops mid-conversation, the whiplash of disconnection stings deeper than expected. One astronaut described the eerie silence after a frozen call as emotional whiplash, like being yanked back into solitary confinement. Yet they keep dialing because even glitchy conversations are oxygen for the soul. Virtual reality takes this escape further. Strap on a headset and the station's walls dissolve, replaced by alpine meadows, bustling city streets, or the sandy shores of a childhood beach. NASA VR programs are meticulously designed to combat sensory deprivation, flooding the brain with stimuli it craves. The crunch of gravel underfoot, the rustle of leaves, even the warmth of simulated sunlight. The illusion isn't perfect. You can't feel the breeze or smell the ocean, but for 20 minutes, you're not an astronaut. You're just a person standing in a forest, and that's enough. The real innovation lies in shared virtual spaces. Crews can now meet with ground teams in digital conference rooms, floating avatars around a holographic table. Psychologists use these environments to conduct therapy sessions, noting how the semblance of physical presence, a virtual nod, an animated gesture eases the emotional barriers of distance. One astronaut recalled a session where his therapist's avatar handed him a digital photo frame displaying his family. The image wasn't real, but the tears were. Yet technology's greatest gift might be its ability to shrink time. Delayed emails and pre-recorded messages turn into time capsules. Parents send videos of soccer games astronauts won't see live. Partners narrate their days like audiobook chapters. The crew listens to them during workouts or before sleep, stitching together a patchwork of earthly life. Some even send responses to be delivered months later, planting emotional breadcrumbs for their future selves. But these tools have their limits. VR can't replicate a hug's warmth, and no screen conveys the way a child's hair smells after bedtime. Astronauts learn to balance digital immersion with acceptance, using tech as a window, not a replacement for the world they've left behind. The healthiest crews are those who cherish the pixels but don't confuse them for the real thing, because in the end, technology's true role isn't to simulate Earth. It's to remind them why they'll risk everything to return. Sleep in space isn't just rest, it's a battle against biology itself. Imagine trying to drift off while floating untethered, your body unsure whether it's upright or upside down, the station's lights glaring at odd intervals as you hurtle through 16 sunrises a day. This isn't just insomnia, it's a full-scale rebellion of the human body against an environment it was never designed to inhabit. Astronauts report a haunting paradox, exhaustion so deep it aches, paired with a brain that refuses to shut down. The science behind this struggle is as fascinating as it is frustrating. On Earth, gravity pulls fluids downward, creating natural pressure gradients that help regulate sleep. In microgravity, those fluids shift upward, causing congestion that mimics a perpetual head cold. Meanwhile, the absence of a mattress means no pressure points to signal relaxation. Your limbs float free, ungrounded, as if your nervous system is waiting for the other shoe to drop. But the real sleep thief is the light. Without the reliable rhythm of terrestrial dawn and dusk, melatonin production goes haywire. Stations use LED systems to simulate daylight cycles, but the effect is superficial, like trying to trick a rainforest plant with a desk lamp. Dreams, when they finally come, are anything but ordinary. Freed from gravity's constraints, the subconscious runs wild. Astronauts describe hyper-vivid scenarios, flying over alien landscapes, conversing with long-dead relatives, or reliving childhood memories in cinematic detail. Some dreams are euphoric, floating through nebulae or discovering hidden station modules. Others are visceral nightmares, suffocating in void black silence, or watching Earth crack apart through the observation window. Psychologists theorize these visions are the brain's desperate attempt to process the surreal reality of space, weaving the unfamiliar into something resembling sense. The emotional toll is relentless. Chronic sleep deprivation amplifies every stressor. Homesickness feels sharper. Conflicts with crewmates escalate faster, and even routine tasks become mental marathons. One astronaut compared it to living in a constant jet-lag fog, where time stretches and contracts unpredictably. The station's sleep pods, no bigger than phone booths, start to feel less like sanctuaries and more like isolation chambers. Some resort to desperate measures, strapping themselves tightly into sleeping bags to mimic the weight of blankets, or playing recordings of rainstorms to drown out the hum of machinery. Yet humanity adapts. Over time, crews develop makeshift sleep rituals, earplugs fashioned from spare foam, eye masks lined with Velcro to stay put in zero gravity. The most effective solution is surprisingly low-tech, strict schedules, lights dim at the same nightly hour, backed by mission control's unwavering enforcement. White noise machines mask the clanks and beeps of the station's never-ending operations. And then there's the ultimate lifeline: meditation. Floating cross-legged in a quiet module, astronauts train their minds to surrender to the void, embracing weightlessness not as a disruption, but as a new kind of lullaby. The breakthrough realization comes slowly. Sleep in space isn't about replicating Earth. It's about discovering an entirely new relationship with rest. The same body that once needed a pillow and darkness now finds solace in the gentle sway of a tethered sleeping bag, the rhythmic pulse of air recyclers, even the eerie tranquility of staring into the star-strewn blackness until exhaustion finally wins. Adaptation isn't perfect. Some still return to Earth with lingering insomnia, but it's enough. Because in orbit, sleep isn't just recovery. It's a daily act of defiance, proof that even in the most inhospitable environment, the human body will stubbornly, creatively, insist on finding its way to rest. Living in a space station the size of a suburban house would test any group's patience. But when your crewmates hail from opposite sides of the planet, every minor habit becomes a cultural flashpoint. Take meal times, for instance. What's polite in one country can be baffling in another. A Japanese astronaut might instinctively tidy their food wrappers immediately, while an American crewmate leaves theirs floating for later. A Russian cosmonaut's deadpan humor lands like a lead balloon with the German engineer. These aren't just quirks, they're invisible fault lines that, if ignored, can fracture team cohesion over months in orbit. Language barriers add another layer of complexity. Even among fluent English speakers, the default language of space missions' nuances get lost in translation. A simple request like, "Could you pass the tool?" might sound curt to someone accustomed to softer phrasing. During high-stress moments, accents thicken and technical terms get mangled, leading to dangerous miscommunications. One infamous incident involved a crew nearly misaligning a solar panel because left and right were confused in the heat of troubleshooting. Now, teams drill not just in procedures, but in linguistic clarity, repeating commands back verbatim, using hand signals as backups, and adopting a shared glossary stripped of idioms. Cultural rituals become lifelines and landmines. For some astronauts, observing quiet mornings is sacrosanct. Others thrive on boisterous banter to start the day. Holidays magnify these differences. When one crew member marked a national holiday by playing their anthem over the station's speakers, another bristled at what felt like forced patriotism. Ground psychologists now help crews map out a shared calendar, blending traditions into new hybrids, a world culture night where each astronaut shares a story or snack from home, or a modified New Year's Eve that cycles through time zones to include everyone's midnight. The magic happens when crews turn clashes into collaboration. A mixed team once resolved a heated debate over workspace organization by inventing a hybrid system. German precision labels met Russian color coding, creating a layout so efficient it's now standard training. Another crew struggling with communication breakdowns started a phrase of the day ritual, teaching each other idioms from their native tongues. The Canadians, "spill the beans," led to the Italians, "in bocca al lupo," weaving a linguistic tapestry that transformed frustration into camaraderie. What emerges from these tensions isn't just tolerance, it's a new culture entirely. Astronauts call it orbital etiquette, an unspoken code born from necessity. You learn to read a crewmate's mood by the way they grip handrails, to offer the last pouch of real coffee as a peace offering, to pause before reacting when someone breaches an invisible norm. The station becomes a microcosm of humanity's best potential, a place where differences aren't erased but woven into something stronger. Because when you're floating 250 miles above Earth, there's no us and them. There's only we, the fragile, brilliant team keeping each other alive in the void. There's a quiet crisis that unfolds around day 100, an emotional gravity well that pulls even the most disciplined astronauts into its depths. They call it the Mid-Mission Slump, and it's as predictable as it is perilous. The initial adrenaline of launch has faded, the end still feels impossibly distant, and the monotony of life in a metal can start gnawing at morale. This isn't just boredom, it's a full system burnout where even the view of Earth loses its magic. Crews report staring blankly at experiments they once found fascinating, floating past windows they used to crowd around, and feeling the crushing weight of sameness in a world without weather, weekends, or surprises. The causes are as varied as they are relentless. Psychologists point to circadian disruption, the body's internal clock, already confused by 16 daily sunrises, simply gives up trying to mark time. Sleep quality plummets, dragging mood and focus down with it. Then there's task saturation, the same maintenance chores, the same experiments, the same faces, all stripped of novelty. Even the thrill of weightlessness becomes mundane when you've spent 3 months chasing floating pens. But the deepest cut is existential, the realization that life back home is moving on without you. Photos of family barbecues, kids' recitals, and changing seasons pile up in emails, each one a reminder that you're suspended in time while the world turns below. Performance suffers in subtle but dangerous ways. Attention to detail slips during equipment checks. Crewmates snipe over minor irritations. a misplaced tool, a half-finished chore that wouldn't register on Earth. One NASA study found reaction times in simulations slowed by nearly 20% during this period, a terrifying statistic when milliseconds can mean the difference between a repaired oxygen scrubber and an evacuation scenario. The slump also breeds procedural blindness, where astronauts robotically follow checklists without truly processing steps, a phenomenon blamed for near misses like improperly secured hatches or misaligned docking protocols. The countermeasures are as ingenious as they are necessary. Ground teams intentionally front-load missions with high-profile tasks, spacewalks, complex experiments to capitalize on early enthusiasm, then scatter smaller wins across the slump to rebuild momentum. Crews adopt gamification, turning mundane tasks into challenges. Who can replace air filters fastest or assemble a puzzle blindfolded in zero gravity? But the real breakthroughs come from embracing the slump rather than fighting it. Psychologists encourage controlled nostalgia, a structured time to reflect on pre-launch memories without spiraling into homesickness. Astronauts might spend an evening sharing childhood stories or recreating family recipes with rationed ingredients, transforming melancholy into connection. Perhaps the most powerful tool is perspective. Veteran astronauts describe the slump as a crucible the moment the mission stops being an adventure and starts being work. Pushing through it isn't about ignoring the grind, it's about finding meaning within it. One crew celebrated their 100th day by reading letters they'd written to themselves pre-launch, rediscovering the awe they'd almost forgotten. Another instituted gratitude orbits, dedicating each pass over a continent to silently appreciating someone on the ground. These rituals don't erase the slump, but they reshape it, from a wall to a tunnel, something to move through rather than stop at. Because here's the secret no training manual mentions: the slump is where real spacefarers are made. Before it, they're visitors in orbit. After, they're something else entirely, people who have stared into the void of their own limits and learned to float right through. Sunrises never get old when you witness 16 a day. Imagine the station hurtling into daylight every 90 minutes, Earth's horizon igniting in a fiery crescent, the atmosphere glowing like molten glass before spilling into the deep blue of oceans and continents. Astronauts describe this as their daily dose of awe, a spectacle so vivid it rewires your sense of time. Some keep sunrise journals, scribbling impressions each pass, the way light fractures over the Sahara, or how storm clouds swirl like brushstrokes over the Pacific. One astronaut admitted they'd trade a week of meals for just one unobstructed view during a particularly breathtaking dawn, proving that in space, natural beauty becomes a currency more valuable than comfort. Then there's the sheer absurdity of zero-gravity life. Without the constant pull of Earth, mundane tasks turn into playground antics. A spilled drink becomes a floating bubble sculpture. A sneeze propels you backward like a cartoon character. Crews invent games to capitalize on the chaos: microgravity bowling with spare parts, or tag, where a single push sends you gliding through multiple modules. Laughter echoes through the station as grown adults rediscover the joy of somersaulting like toddlers, or balancing utensils on their noses just to watch them hover. These aren't just distractions, they're psychological pressure valves, moments of unchecked silliness that dissolve the strain of high-stakes work. Music takes on a new dimension when sound waves behave differently. An astronaut strumming a guitar discovers harmonics that wouldn't exist on Earth, the notes lingering in the air like invisible fireflies. Others cluster around a floating speaker, mesmerized by how bass vibrates through their bones in the absence of gravity. One crew famously staged a silent disco, each member donning headphones and dancing wildly out of sync, their movements fluid and exaggerated, a surreal ballet of joy unmoored from rhythm. The station's windows become frames for Earth's ever-changing art exhibit. Lightning storms pulse over continents like flashbulbs in slow motion. Bioluminescent algae swirl in ocean eddies, painting the night seas with neon. One astronaut spent months tracking a single river delta's seasonal shifts, watching it bleed into new channels like liquid veins. These aren't just observations, they're intimate conversations with a planet that, from this vantage point, feels alive. Food, usually a source of monotony, sometimes delivers unexpected delight. A hidden stash of fresh oranges arrives on a resupply mission, their citrus scent exploding through the sterile air. Crewmates share single pieces like sacred offerings, savoring each burst of flavor as if tasting sunlight itself. Even the ritual of rehydrating a meal becomes communal theater, with astronauts betting on whether the meatloaf will resemble food or abstract art. But perhaps the purest joy is the unscripted humanity that flourishes in the void, the impromptu storytelling sessions where crewmates reveal childhood secrets. The way a floating photo of someone's dog becomes the station's unofficial mascot, or the quiet solidarity of watching a teammate silently weep over a laggy video from home, not offering solutions, just floating closer until shoulders touch. These moments stitch together a patchwork of normalcy in the most abnormal environment, reminding them that joy isn't just found in grand vistas or scientific triumphs. Sometimes it's in the way a shared chocolate bar, melted and messy in zero gravity, tastes like the best thing they've ever eaten simply because it's real, and it's shared, and it's now. After 200 days of floating through the cosmos, the idea of gravity becomes strangely terrifying. Astronauts preparing for re-entry describe a cocktail of emotions: eagerness to hug their families, yes, but also a quiet dread of the planet they once called home. The same blue marble that filled them with wonder from orbit now looms like an obstacle course, its atmosphere a fiery gauntlet their fragile capsule must survive. One NASA veteran likened it to standing at the edge of a diving board for weeks, knowing the plunge is inevitable but unsure if your body remembers how to swim. The physical preparation is brutal. Crews spend their final days in orbit reconditioning muscles that gravity will soon reclaim, squeezing into resistant suits and pounding treadmills to remind their bodies of Earth's relentless pull. But the real battle is mental. After months of effortless floating, the concept of up and down feels almost mythical. Astronauts catch themselves reaching for walls that would now be ceilings, mentally rehearsing how to walk without sending themselves spinning. The most unsettling realization: they'll soon carry their own weight again. One cosmonaut confessed to lying awake nights, palms sweating at the thought of his bones suddenly feeling twice as heavy. Then there's the re-entry itself, a controlled fall that pushes engineering and human endurance to their limits. The capsule becomes a meteor, its heat shield glowing cherry red as plasma engulfs the windows. Inside, astronauts endure crushing G-forces, their bodies pressed into seats like lead weights. Communication blackout adds to the terror. For 7 endless minutes, they're cut off from mission control, hurtling through radio silence with no confirmation they'll emerge intact. Veterans say it's the ultimate test of trust in the technology, in their training, and in the team that's waiting somewhere beneath that inferno. Yet the real shock comes after touchdown. Emerging wobbly-legged onto solid ground, astronauts confront a world that's overwhelmingly alive. The scent of grass is almost nauseating after months of sterile air. Sunlight feels like a physical weight on skin accustomed to filtered LEDs. Even the noise is assaultive: birds, wind, the rustle of clothing. all amplified after the station's mechanical hum. Some describe weeping uncontrollably when rain first touches their faces. Others panic in crowds, their brains overloaded by the sudden flood of human expressions and movement. Reverse culture shock digs deeper than sensory overload. Simple conversations feel alien. How do you explain the overview effect to someone who's never seen the curve of the horizon? Friends joke about being back to reality, but astronauts know the truth. They've returned from the most real experience of their lives to a world that now feels oddly staged. One astronaut recalled standing in a grocery store aisle, paralyzed by the absurd abundance of cereal boxes after months of rationed meals. Another woke screaming when their bed's gravity made them dream they were trapped under rubble. The readjustment period is measured in months, not days. Balance takes weeks to relearn. Stairs become Everest-like challenges. More haunting are the emotional aftershocks, the guilt of having missed a child's first steps, the frustration when words fail to capture what they've seen, the existential ache of longing for the very void that once made them crave Earth. Support groups become lifelines where returning crews share tricks, keeping a glass of water by the bed to watch it sit still, or lying on the floor just to feel the unyielding press of gravity as a comfort. Perhaps the cruelest twist is the nostalgia. Months later, when the body has healed and the world feels familiar again, many astronauts catch themselves staring at the night sky, not with wonder, but with something closer to homesickness. The station is still up there, another crew floating past the windows they once pressed their palms against. And in quiet moments, they'll close their eyes and swear they can still feel the weightless sway of the sleeping bag, the station's heartbeat of machinery, the infinite starlight just beyond the glass. Coming home isn't an ending. It's the start of learning how to belong to two worlds at once and never fully fitting into either. Coming home from space isn't the triumphant return most imagine. It's a collision of worlds no training can fully prepare you for. The moment the capsule door cracks open, Earth's atmosphere rushes in like a tidal wave of sensation. Fresh air, thick with pollen and pavement smells, burns nostrils accustomed to sterile filters. Sunlight stings eyes that haven't seen unfiltered UV in months. Even the weight of their own eyelids feels alien, muscles straining against gravity's forgotten pull. This isn't just adjustment, it's sensory bombardment, every nerve ending screaming after 200 days in the quiet void. The psychological whiplash cuts deeper. Imagine describing color to someone who's only seen black and white. That's how astronauts feel trying to explain orbital life to friends. Casual questions like, "What was it like?" reduce transcendent experiences to hollow sound bites. One astronaut recalled the frustration of pointing to the moon during a backyard barbecue, only to realize no one else saw it as a place they'd circled, a cratered companion that had filled their window for weeks. The isolation isn't physical anymore, it's existential, a gulf between those who have seen the planet from the outside and those who haven't. Simple routines become minefields. Supermarket aisles trigger panic attacks, too many choices after months of rationed meals. The hum of a refrigerator sounds deafening compared to the station's rhythmic machinery. Some develop gravity guilt, agonizing over leaving crewmates still in orbit, their lives reduced to pixelated faces on delayed video calls. Sleep brings its own horrors. Veterans often wake flailing, convinced they're floating away, only to be pinned down by bedsheets that feel like lead weights. Relationships strain under the weight of unspoken expectations. Partners who weathered the mission with pride now face a stranger who startles at doorbells and forgets how to make small talk. Children shy away from a parent whose muscle atrophy makes them struggle to lift a toddler. It's like living with a ghost who remembers being human, confessed one spouse. Astronauts grieve the passage of time. They missed birthdays, funerals, the slow weathering of family photos while struggling to reconcile the person they were at launch with the person they've become. Recovery isn't linear. Some cling to space habits, eating squeeze-tube applesauce or tethering their keys to belts. Others obsessively watch station live streams, tracking the new crew's progress like homesick expats. But gradually, Earth reclaims them. The day they stop reaching for handrails that aren't there, the first genuine laugh at a joke that doesn't involve zero-gravity pranks. The moment they realize they've gone hours without checking the sky's coordinates, too absorbed in the messy, overwhelming, beautiful noise of being grounded. Yet part of them never fully returns, like deep sea divers carrying the pressure in their bones long after surfacing. Astronauts walk through ordinary life with an invisible weight, the memory of looking down at clouds instead of up, of floating between stars and Earth, forever torn between the pull of gravity and the echo of weightlessness. Home becomes a complicated word, spelled the same way but meaning something entirely new. The view from orbit does something irreversible to the human psyche. It collapses the distance between continents, cultures, and conflicts into a single, fragile mosaic. Astronauts returning from long-duration missions often speak with a quiet urgency about the paradox they witnessed. Borders that seem so absolute on the ground vanish when seen from space, while the threads connecting all life become glaringly visible. This shift in perspective isn't just poetic, it's a blueprint for reimagining how we live on Earth. The same skills that keep crews sane in isolation, radical empathy, intentional community, and a relentless focus on shared survival hold the key to solving some of our planet's most entrenched challenges. Take conflict resolution. On the station, tensions between crewmates aren't inconveniences, they're existential threats. A single unresolved argument could cascade into a critical error during a spacewalk or equipment repair. So astronauts train in what psychologists call collective emotional regulation, learning to voice frustrations before they fester and reframe disagreements as shared problems rather than personal attacks. Imagine applying that same rigor to political divides or workplace conflicts on Earth. Instead of retreating into echo chambers, we might approach disagreements like crewmates troubleshooting a malfunction, focusing not on who's right, but on what solution keeps the ship intact. The orbital perspective also exposes the absurdity of scarcity mindsets. Every drop of water on the station is recycled, from sweat to urine to breathe condensation, in a closed-loop system that would put even the most sustainable Earth-bound communities to shame. Floating in a realm where resources are literally finite, astronauts develop what one engineer calls abundance through ingenuity, finding ways to repurpose materials until nothing is wasted. Down here, where billions still lack clean water while others waste it without thought, this ethos isn't just aspirational, it's survival math for a warming planet. The station proves that scarcity isn't an inevitability. It's a design flaw we have the tools to fix. Perhaps the most humbling lesson is the irreplaceable value of mundane moments. In space, the simplest earthly pleasures, the crunch of an apple, the smell of rain on pavement, become objects of intense longing. Crews spend months rediscovering joy in microfractions, a shared joke during a tedious repair, the way sunlight paints the walls during a quiet coffee break. This hyper-awareness of small beauties reveals how much we take for granted in our gravity-bound lives. The station teaches that happiness isn't found in grand achievements alone, but in the daily decision to notice, to truly see the ordinary miracles we're swimming in. But the ultimate revelation is one of scale. Seeing Earth as a solitary blue marble against the infinite black rewires your understanding of time and legacy. Carbon emissions and deforestation aren't abstract debates anymore when you watch storms intensify and forests shrink in real time across continents. Astronauts return with what author Frank White termed the overview effect, the visceral understanding that we're all crewmates on a planetary spacecraft, hurtling through space with no backup oxygen. This isn't metaphor, it's astronomy. The station's greatest gift might be its ability to shrink existential crises into actionable truths. If 6 people from rival nations can keep each other alive in the void, surely billions can do the same on this fragile oasis we call home. The irony is exquisite. To learn how to live better on Earth, we had to leave it. Those who venture into the black don't just bring back scientific data, they carry a vision of what humanity could be, distilled from the hardest classroom imaginable. The station whispers this truth to anyone willing to listen. Survival isn't about conquering frontiers, it's about realizing there never were any. Just an endless, interconnected web of life, so much easier to see when you're floating a little farther away. The next frontier of space exploration isn't just technological, it's psychological. With Mars missions looming and lunar bases on the drawing board, scientists are racing to solve a puzzle no amount of engineering can fully crack: how to keep astronauts mentally whole during years-long voyages where Earth is little more than a faded blue dot in the rearview. The solutions being pioneered today, from AI-driven therapy bots to holographic loved ones, read like science fiction, but they're being tested in orbital labs and Antarctic simulators right now, forging a new playbook for human resilience in the void. One breakthrough lies in habitat design itself. Future deep space stations are being reimagined as sensory sanctuaries, where every surface serves both function and psychological need. Architects collaborate with neuroscientists to create biophilic environments that trick the brain into feeling grounded. LED ceilings mimic Earth's sunrise progression, while hydroponic gardens do double duty as oxygen sources and living art installations. Even the walls are getting smarter. Embedded sensors adjust lighting and soundscapes in real time based on crew stress levels, softening hues when heart rates spike or piping in forest ambience during high-tension repairs. The International Space Station's sterile corridors are giving way to habitats that feel less like machines and more like homes, with communal oasis zones where astronauts can float among projected landscapes, alpine meadows one day, coral reefs the next, stitching together a patchwork of Earth's beauty to combat the sensory starvation of space. Virtual support systems are undergoing a revolution too. Laggy video calls will soon be relics, replaced by volumetric holograms that let families appear life-sized in the middle of a Martian habitat. Researchers at NASA, a human factors lab, are testing haptic hugs or wearable suits that let parents on Earth squeeze their astronaut children's shoulders through pressure-sensitive fabric, collapsing millions of miles into something almost tactile. Even AI is getting emotional intelligence upgrades. Next-gen therapy bots trained on thousands of astronaut journals can detect subtle shifts in speech patterns or sleep rhythms, gently nudging crews towards stress relief activities before they recognize their own burnout. One experimental system, dubbed Mission Morpheus, uses generative AI to craft personalized bedtime stories woven from crew members' childhood memories, helping them drift off to narratives of hometown bakeries or summer lakeside camps, a digital lullaby against the silence of space. Perhaps the most radical innovations target the brain itself. Neurofeedback headsets, originally designed for PTSD patients, now help astronauts regulate stress by visualizing their brainwaves as constellations they can steer toward calm through meditation. Pharmaceutical research is exploring time-release compounds that stabilize mood without drowsiness. Think antidepressants optimized for zero gravity. There's even talk of memory prosthetics, implants that could one day stimulate neural pathways associated with joy, offering bursts of comfort during the darkest stretches of a 3-year Mars mission. But the most powerful tool might be the oldest, human connection reimagined. Future missions will likely include psychological first responders, crew members trained not just in medicine, but in conflict mediation and emotional triage. They'll facilitate vulnerability circles where astronauts share fears under the guise of mission-critical debriefs, and orchestrate surprises like birthday messages recorded pre-launch by loved ones, timed to arrive precisely when morale typically plummets. The lesson from decades of orbital living is clear. No amount of technology can replace the healing power of being truly seen by another person, even if that person is floating beside you inside a tin can between worlds. These innovations share a common thread. They treat mental health not as an afterthought, but as vital as oxygen systems. Because the greatest threat to a Mars mission won't be radiation or equipment failure. It's the slow erosion of hope when home is too far to see, and the only face you've looked into for 2 years is your own reflection in a dusty helmet visor. The next generation of spacefarers won't just survive their journeys, they'll thrive, carrying with them the most revolutionary cargo of all, the unbroken human spirit. Living 200 days in space reshapes more than bones and muscle, it rewires the soul. Astronauts return to Earth carrying invisible souvenirs, the lingering vertigo of weightlessness, the phantom sensation of floating in their sleep, and most profoundly, a reshaped understanding of what it means to be fragile. The same journey that exposes them to cosmic radiation and physical decay also gifts them something rare, perspective stripped of all pretense. From the paralyzing loneliness of a midnight orbit to the heart-stopping beauty of auroras dancing beneath their feet, every moment in the void becomes a mirror, reflecting not just who they are, but who humanity could be. Consider the duality of their existence up there. 1 hour, they're troubleshooting a malfunctioning oxygen scrubber with the calm of surgeons, knowing a single error could doom them all. The next, they're pressed against the observation module, tears floating in microgravity as they watch a hurricane swirl over the Caribbean, realizing they're simultaneously closer to the storm than anyone on the ground, and farther from helping than they've ever been. This is the astronaut's paradox, unparalleled connection paired with unbridgeable distance. They see Earth's interconnectedness, shipping lanes threading continents like veins, wildfires ignoring national borders, while floating utterly apart from it all. The lessons they bring back aren't just scientific, they're emotional blueprints for survival in an increasingly fractured world. When you've depended for oxygen on machinery maintained by someone who grew up on the other side of a geopolitical divide, abstract concepts like global cooperation become as tangible as the air in your lungs. Crews return fluent in a new language of empathy, having learned that in confinement, small kindnesses, a shared candy bar, a handwritten joke left in a toolkit carry more weight than grand gestures. They've lived the ultimate test of community, 6 people with no exit door, forced to either find common ground or perish. Perhaps the most humbling revelation is how space amplifies the ordinary. Mundane acts, sipping real coffee from a smuggled pouch, touching a photograph of a pet, hearing a child's laughter through static, become lifelines. Astronauts describe developing a sort of sensory nostalgia, aching not just for people, but for the textures of earthly existence, the resistance of dough under kneading hands, the smell of pages in an old book, the way wind rearranges hair. These aren't sentimental trifles, they're proof that what sustains us isn't technology or grandeur, but the uncelebrated minutiae we scarcely notice until they're gone. Their greatest legacy may be the urgency they instill in those of us who never leave the ground. Seeing Earth as a single organism through the overview effect isn't just poetic, it's a call to action. When an astronaut points out that the atmosphere looks no thicker than the skin of an apple, or that deforestation scars are visible from 400 kilometers up, it collapses the distance between individual choices and planetary consequences. They return not as starry-eyed dreamers, but as reluctant prophets armed with first-hand knowledge of how finite and breathtakingly rare our world truly is. So as we marvel at their courage, let's also honor their vulnerability. Space doesn't just demand physical toughness. It requires the courage to sit with loneliness, the humility to ask for help, and the wisdom to find joy in a floating bubble of water when the universe outside is infinite and indifferent. That's the real mission they've completed. Proving humanity isn't just about reaching new heights, but about bringing our humanity with us wherever we go. If their journey resonates with you, share what moves you most in the comments below, and join us as we keep exploring the unspoken stories behind the final frontier.